Hello there. There are people born in this world with a sensitized nervous system. Some of them are naturally more intuitive than others, and they feel others' emotions. They feel them vividly, but silently. These are their dilemmas. So I have 3 dilemmas for you today. All are to do with the family secret. So what does that mean? What's the family secret? The things that we keep tucked away, secret. These are the things. Family secret tends to be the things in life that somehow we feel a strange shame around, but we don't really have the answers to. And it can be tucked away in some of those family dynamics that we aren't fully aware of, or we are kind of aware of, but we're too uncomfortable with bringing those up and out into the open. But in actual fact, when we do, it can really change things in terms of how we feel and what we feel about ourselves. So we have Lilith, who's a life code 9, who is releasing old family hurt and wants to know how she can support her own process. And we have Elspeth, who is a life code 5, who wants to help her brother and her nephew bridge their family divide. And we have Susie, who's a life code 6, who finds herself at odds with her children and wants to harmonise the discord. So let's get to the first dilemma of today. So we have Lilith, who is a life code 9, and wants to release old family hurt and wants to know how she can support herself through that particular process. So we have Lilith as a life code 9. Now, we have 3 kind of people here involved, but I'd say mostly it's to do with Lilith herself. So as we go further on, I may well utilise the other family members if it seems appropriate. But we'll do that as we go forward. But Lilith is a life code 9, which is everything about revealing aspects of the unconscious out into the open. So when we come to looking at her, it will be very interesting. So what has Lilith told us about her situation that she would like us to have a look at? So what's the situation? Resolving the past. Hello Heidi, and thank you for offering your expertise. I have been working to clear my house of unwanted and unneeded items to clear the path for new opportunity and emotional balance. I have every material item from my personal past, family heirlooms and items from past relationships, carefully stored, exhibited and or organised. So what's the problem the situation creates? Most of my family and past relationships are severed, including father, who's a life code 6, and brother, who's a life code 9, but not my mother, who's a 4, and sister, who's a 4 also. Initially, wardrobe release felt freeing. Now I find myself weeping with emotion and pain as I dig deeper into the items from my own past and others and ancestors. I know I don't want them anymore, but I am no longer letting them go. So what's the question that she would like me to help her solve? Well, what is going on with this experience? Is emotional pain part of the process, or is there a better way to release these items? Okay, so let's have a look at Lilith. Let's have a look at her in terms of her energy around being that life code 9. Excuse me whilst I just get my big giant deck of archetypes. So let's have a look and see what's going on as far as she's concerned. Yes, life code 9s can be really quite sentimental because, yes, they do store, or as Lilith's experience has been, which is they do store all of that feeling and intensity, not only from their own world coming forth out, but also the responsibility of others and that feeling of that responsibility of others, and that somehow or another you're responsible for other people's worlds, their issues, their things, and also, as in this scenario that she feels in charge of these family heirlooms. Okay, so let's have a look and see what's going on as far as Lilith is concerned, as to why she finds this a tough experience right at this moment in her life. So I'm thinking about her, and then we'll see what archetype we have to reflect that. Okay, so we have the scribe. Okay, so we'll put Lilith as that life code 9 as the scribe. So what she's finding right now is this: the scribe is obviously about writing, but it's also about history. Okay, so it can be very symbolic of our history. So at the moment, Lilith is, the reason why she's holding on to these things is because she's trying to almost document her own history. So that suggests that there are perhaps gaps in that history, some things that are there that make sense, and a lot of things that don't make sense. So that suggests that there would have been quite a strong level of unpredictability, unreliability that's been part of her past, which is the reason why I suspect that she likes to keep hold of things now and finds it tough to let go, because it's given her things, have given her some kind of line of consistency of how she can match things together that don't quite make sense. So releasing those things to her right now may well feel like, well, how do I make sense of things? I haven't got the things that I normally hold on to make sense of these things. So part of her will be looking to hold on to it in order to make sense of herself. Okay, which is quite often something that we do when we're exploring our inner world and developing that internal relationship and internal process. So Lilith, as that life code 9, is taking that opportunity, I would say, that stronger opportunity to really actually harmonize and release some old things that she no longer needs to hold on to emotionally. But at the moment, the way that she's kind of doing that is still linking to those aspects of the past. So let's see what would possibly help her to perhaps accelerate this process, or make it feel more comfortable and into a position where she can actually let go of these things that she's hoarding. Okay, so thinking about her, let's have a little look and see what we've got. Oh, okay, interesting. We've got the thief. So the big fear is that if she lets these things go, something's been taken from her. Okay, so we'll put this on this side. So we've got the thief in that. So the real fear is that something's being taken from her. So how does she then come up to a situation where she can let go of these things? Well, it's about then addressing the emotion inside for Lilith when she's felt that things have been taken from her. Okay, things, either physical things or emotional things, things that she's felt that she wasn't given the chance to hold on to and enjoy, that there is a possibility of them being taken. Now, we obviously know she's got a brother and sister, so there's three of them in terms of siblings. So maybe it is around that maybe when she had something, she didn't know whether it was going to be taken away or whether it was truly something that belonged to her, or there's this kind of feeling of something being given and then maybe taken away, given and then taken away. So the fear is that if she gives something away, she'll give the whole of herself away, is, I would say, in how we look at this. So let's see if Lilith is brave enough to start letting go of these things, rather than just the experiencing the emotions as they come up and as her experience. So she's then kind of looking at these things and then feeling unable to let go of them. So let's see how it would impact her right now if she did start to be brave and actually grieve and let go of these things. So let's have a little look. So I'm thinking of that as we go back into this big pile and see what I get. Okay, it's upside down. Okay, so we've got the priest. So she may feel temporarily as though it's quite an isolating experience. She's feeling very alone as far as that journey is concerned. But the priest is an alone figure, symbolically. It's an alone figure, but at the same time, it has faith. So a priest has faith. It has a faith in a higher power, a higher nature. That's the nature of the priest. So in order for that priest to feel comfortable in the world symbolically, they have a faith, and without that faith, there couldn't be a priest, so to speak. So what we have is that Lilith will feel that she's making this process on her own. It's very personal to her. But if she's brave, she will feel a connection that's deeper and stronger to something bigger. So a bigger picture, a bigger sense of self, a bigger sense of faith and connection to a source bigger than herself and bigger than her life experience. So she can take from that in terms of drawing upon that to help her feel comfortable with letting these things go. So what can we learn from that as a sensitive? Well, sometimes it is a case of you can't always rely on your own sense of shame almost in giving something up or letting something go. Sometimes the letting go of something, whether physically or emotionally, is about a greater faith in yourself that's bigger than your immediate environment. So before we move on to the next dilemma, we have an important message from our sponsor, me, whilst the screen changes for a moment, goes static for a moment, whilst I just clean the board and move on to our next dilemma. I'll be back in a few moments. Okay, so we move on to dilemma number 2 for today. So we have Elspeth, who is a life code 5 and wants to help her brother and nephew bridge their deep family divide. Okay, so and the divide between her brother and her nephew. Okay, so Elspeth is a life code 5. Now we have the nephew, who is a life code 2. Put him there. And we have Elspeth's brother, who is a life code 9. Now, interestingly, the brother is behind bars, which is a metaphorical way of looking at how you will feel, especially as that life code 9. Okay, so now let's have a look and see what Elspeth has told us about her situation. So, what's the situation? When my brother divorced, his youngest son took his mother's side and refused to have anything to do with his father. His stance has become harder since his mother died, and he refused to let his father attend the funeral. My brother recently had his will written up and has told me that his son is cut out completely, so it's obvious that there is pain on both sides. What's the problem the situation creates? I'm in contact with both parties, but I haven't let on to them. I'm trying to be a bridge between them, but it's like walking on eggshells, so sometimes it's a strain. Other family members also are not sure what to say or do in case they make things worse. So what's the question that Elspeth wants me to answer? They are both decent human beings who have hurt each other a lot. Will they ever be close again, and can I help it at all? Okay, so what do we have? Well, we have this, this dilemma between the 2 and the 9, really. and Elspeth is finding herself as the person that's looking on. So she wants to see if her brother and her nephew can put their past behind and start to communicate. So what do we have? Well, we have her brother who's feeling, I would say, the strongest part of the restriction. Okay, he's feeling that frustrated in that he feels that he can't communicate, and he's feeling blamed. Okay, so he can't communicate in a way that his son can hear him, and he can't put his internal world into an external way that is a way that is a suitable line of communication. Why? Well, as at Life Code 9 anyway, Life Code 9s get the blame for a lot of things, but also I suspect that he's an unaware Life Code 9, so he will feel really quite trapped by this feeling that somehow or another he's blamed, or he has to, kind of take on a level of blame as far as any situation is concerned. Now the nephew, as at Life Code 2, I would say is probably highly protective, because Life Code 2s, they run the male energy. It can be where they feel that someone has done another person a wrong. They can be highly loyal to the other person and very, very protective. Okay, so I suspect that the nephew is very protective of his mother and his mother's kind of history and line of that communication. And the brother here, Elspeth's brother, feels frustrated that he cannot communicate his side of that interaction. Now, Elspeth is, as a Life Code 5, is that warrior energy. Now, this is really quite strong for a Life Code 5, in that she will be very self-aware, because normally Life Code 5s would barrel on in there anyway as that warrior, but she's kind of trying to be diplomatic and not on the outside of that. So it would be a very aware Life Code 5 that would do that, and is trying to show a level of compassion for the two people as individuals, okay, who are in pain or in hurting. Obviously the nephew, because his mother's died, and the brother here, who never got to feel that he could explain or resolve his difference with his son's mother. Okay, so let's have a little look and see. Let's see where the nephew's coming from, because I suspect that could be the key to whether they can or cannot resolve their difference. So let's have a little look and see what we get as far as the nephew is concerned. My big pile. Let's have a look. Okay, so funnily enough, we've got this thief again. Seems to be this theme. This is a giant deck, because I put two decks together, at least I mix them all up, and just to see, whether we get two of something coming out sometimes, but also to make it tough for the same thing to come out twice. Yet we have the thief, back again, and we've only just looked at this in terms of these family secrets, the family dilemmas. It seems to be that the main theme, as far as these is concerned, is what they feel has been taken from them. So in actual fact, a lot of the hurt, we can see this as a life lesson, is a lot of the hurt that has been around these situations is the feeling that something's being taken. And while someone has that hurt and that pain around feeling that something is taken, they can't forgive. Okay, so I suspect that this is most certainly what it is that's going on as far as the nephew is concerned. He just feels that whatever he thinks that his father has done, he can't forgive, because he feels that something strong has been taken. Okay, and I suspect that the way that he sees it is that his father isn't owning something, that there will be some secret part of the thing that perhaps Elspeth is not aware of, that her brother is not owning, which is why her nephew can't can't let it go at all, to the extent where he couldn't have his father at his mother's funeral. So there will be intense sense of disappointment that he's hanging on to, that I would say that there is. It's not part of anyone's imagination, but it'd be something that perhaps Elspeth's brother hasn't yet owned himself. Okay, so let's have a look. If we have a look at Elspeth's brother and see, whether we feel that there is an energy around that maybe there is something that he hasn't yet owned that's been deeply hurtful as far as his nephew is her nephew is concerned, that where he can't get over. The strongest thing around family secrets, family dilemmas, is that when they feel that something's been taken and can't be given back. Okay, so let's have a little look and see what that could be as far as Elspeth's brother is concerned. Oh, we've got the mother, which is, it is as raw as it is. It's to do with some aspects that he wasn't fair. There's a strong feeling, as far as the nephew is concerned, that his father wasn't fair to his mother, and that his father hasn't owned that in terms of being truly sorry, as far as that's concerned. And quite clearly, this his son is not going to forgive him at all until he owns whatever it is that or was deeply wounding, as far as his mother is concerned, or obviously his wife, or ex-wife rather. But there's something there that it's choosing to show us that something that he did do that was deeply wounding, as far as that was concerned, that he hasn't yet owned. And that will be the true reason why Elspeth's nephew can't let it go. Because if the brother can own it and make some kind of sincere apology for what it is, it's something that is distanced from him as that life code 9. It's in there, but it's not in there, as in it's kind of buried deep in his own subconscious, but he's not consciously fully aware of it, and that's why there's this big void between the two. And the son won't let him get away with it. That's what it is not going to step over it. He won't come forward unless he fully owns that scenario, that memory, that vibration. So Elspeth is in a little bit of a tricky situation as far as that's concerned. So let's have a look and see two things. Let's see how it's affecting her, but also how it, how she proceeds with it. Okay, how she proceeds with it in terms of looking after the situation, but also herself. Okay, so she doesn't feel, kind of buried in the middle and eventually feeling that she has to take sides. Okay, so let's have a look at what the emotional effect is on her right now. Okay. Right, we've got the gambler. So, the emotional effect is that it feels very unpredictable. Okay. And for, an intuitive sensitive, quite often, feeling that it can be very unpredictable does actually have some, health consequences, in perhaps emotional health more than necessarily physical. As a life code 5, she may be a bit more resilient as far as that's concerned, because she's that warrior. But, it does feel to her like it's an unpredictable environment, and that's, I would say, is not particularly good for her. So how does she start to feel better about this? She's got to kind of keep quiet, and that would be an emotional strain, and it feels like it as that gambler energy. So let's see, how she can possibly address this, where it feels, easier on her. Okay, so I'm thinking again. We've got the prostitute, which means that she's really feeling that she's having to sell herself, as far as both appeasing both men are concerned. So I would say that the best way to solve this is not to appease. And maybe at some point or another she feels that's possible to do. And maybe it is kind of a light confrontation of the issue, but that's tough as that life code 5, because life code 5s tend to be, and then when they've had enough, the warrior comes out, and it would be, for crying out loud, man, for crying out loud, own up, man up, whatever she would utilise as the words, and say, crying out loud, apologise to your son, whatever you've done back then really, really has upset him, because it's had a huge impact on how he's seen you in terms of your relationship with your mother. And to say to the nephew, for crying out loud, just say to your father, look, if you'd apologised, you would have been able to come and you would be part of my life. But it kind of comes out for a life code 5 as a, I've had enough, and a bleh, which I suspect that Elspeth wants to avoid, but at the moment it's edging in that kind of direction. So she's feeling the pressure of having to sell herself to both parties, as in that eggshell dance. So I would say what she would do well to do is to take that back into her life and say to herself, right, how many years has she either been protecting her brother from his emotional dishonesty, or does it go back further? So does it go back to her own parental dynamic, perhaps, or her own dynamic as what she observed between her brother and her father of a situation that didn't feel harmonious or was emotionally strained because they wouldn't communicate? So it's one of those things that she needs to take herself back to, into, where does that link? But it links most strongly with the brother, I would say, than rather with the nephew. This feels to me the nephew is someone who's is deeply hurt by his parents' relationship, to the extent that he is prepared to let his father go. So if she doesn't want to be caught in the middle of that, let's have a look. One more. Let's have a look to see how she can protect herself from being caught right in the middle of that, more so than she is presently. Okay. Interesting. So we've got the seeker. What does that mean? It means that the way that she then feels harmonious about this is to seek her own truth within herself and look back into her own family history, as to what I've had said previously, is to, where in her life perhaps she has overly protected her brother, or she has seen that similar dynamic has occurred of lack of communication and angriness, perhaps, that has occurred between her own parents' dynamic, or between her brother and I suspect the father, because we've got a two male scenario now. Okay, and I strongly suspect that if there was a good and strong, healthy line of communication between Elspeth's brother and their father, then her brother would not have been in this situation now. So for Elspeth, it's about her releasing her own energy that kind of created a scenario where she felt smack bang in the middle of things, because it's causing her strain to have to protect this kind of secret that she's talking to either one of them, which is a hell of a pressure and a hell of an expectation on her from both parties, really. So what can we learn from this? Well, we can learn from this that maybe, some things in life aren't necessarily what's immediately in front of you, that it can be something that's highlighting an earlier aspect or an earlier dynamic in your life. And that, it isn't always good to protect people from themselves. Sometimes it is a case of, recognizing where you fit into that, and in order to give you options and in order to give you choices on then how you handle things moving forward. Otherwise, those pressures can build until they bubble over. So, before we go into the next dilemma, we have another important message from our sponsor, still me, which will take you to a static screen whilst I clear the board and we move on to the next dilemma. I'll be back in a few moments. Okay, so we have the third dilemma for today. So we have Susie, who finds herself, let's find her, bear in mind, Susie, who finds herself at odds with her children and wants to harmonise that discord. So Susie is a life code 6, okay? And we have 3 people involved. We have her daughter, who's a life code 6 as well. And we also have a son who is also a life code 6. We've got 3 life code 6s, okay, all together. Okay, so it'll be interesting to see what that dynamic is as 3 life code 6s. So what has Susie told us? I'm a single parent to twins, age 17, a girl and a boy. For some reason, when the twins turned 17, they began to be more disruptive than usual and smoking weed and had some unsavoury friends. My daughter is no longer at home and I bicker with her when she does come home. She does 3 days a week and I can't seem to be nice to her for long periods of time. I feel frustration and resentment towards her. So what's the problem the situation creates? Being controlled and me trying to find my power and gain authority and control in the home. What's the question that she wants me to have a look at? How can the same life codes get on in the house when there is a lot of frustration, anger and disapproval of each other? Okay, so what do we have? Well, we have 3 life code 6s. So what's that dynamic? Well, Susie is wondering how to diffuse the tension and what is behind it. Well, as 3 life code 6s, we're going to have a real strong clash of communication and clash of energies, because as a life code 6, everything is about the soul path. So everyone in this sort of dynamic will feel like they're on their own path. They want their own thing. They want their own thing, own path, own thing, and everything. As well as a life code for a life code 6, there's lots of paths that come towards them. So it will feel like quite a strongly pressured environment. There's lots of things coming towards them in that direction, and lots towards them in terms of being the centre of the world. Okay, life code 6s are right at the centre of the tree, so they tend to be right at the centre of things. So, you know, a 17-year-old girl is going to be wanting to be the centre of things. A 17-year-old boy is going to want to be the centre of things. But almost in you know, how do they become the centre of things? Either demanding, or they become the centre of things by disruption. Susie will want to be the centre of things because, you know, she's the central figure, she's the parent. But at the same time, as that single parent, I suspect that over the years she's found herself compensating as that life code 6 for the fact that she's felt that she's had to do things on her own and be on her own and set an example on her own, all of those kind of things. So that pressure to be that perfect parent on both sides will have no doubt created some things for Susie where she's felt that she's overcompensated, and therefore her 2 children are going through a phase where they lack a sense of respect for her and the values that she's trying to help them with. Okay, so let's have a look. I think we'll have a look at the daughter first, because this is the one that Susie struggles with the most. Let's have a look and see what the daughter is up to in her own mind. Okay, so I'm thinking of the daughter. Let's see what we have come up. Okay, so we have the martyr. Interesting. So the daughter, we'll have a look in to see whether the daughter feels as though she's the martyr, or she looks at her mother as the martyr and then feels that she hasn't got any kind of respect for her. So I suspect, though, that it's the daughter who feels as though she's the martyr, that she's supposed to be there as a line of being there for a mother and all of this kind of thing, and then is feeling resentful of it, and so is kind of there, isn't there, and then is there under duress, and is a kind of passive aggressive thing going on, for which Susie is then feeling that, hence the reason why she goes through that feeling of feeling frustrated and resentful towards her own daughter, because actually the daughter is storing this kind of line of passive aggression of, I don't want to be here, but I'm a martyr, so I have to be here because I need to be here because of my mother, kind of thing. So let's have a look and see what Susie is up to. Okay, so let's see if there is a wound as that life code 6 that's, you know, the centre of things, the soul energy that's trying to heal. Let's have a look and see if there is something as far as that's concerned. Okay, so we have the Knight. So what's trying to heal for Susie is the part of her that needs rescuing. So the Knight is the rescuer, it's the person who, you know, that she shows up, rescues, and then disappears and goes off again. So this is what this dynamic is, it's unspoken. So the daughter thinks she's coming in, rescuing her mother, and then disappears off again. And Susie is feeling resentful of that, because there's the feeling that she doesn't stay, etc., and all of that part with it. So the daughter is in that frame of mind where she thinks she's doing her mother a favour by coming back and returning. So what can Susie do as far as that's concerned? Well, I suspect that Susie has been on a deeper level waiting for her own rescuer in life. It must have been tough as a single parent, you know, bringing up twins, you know, twins, 2 children right at the same time, and having to do that all on her own for 17 years. Tough for anyone. So she's been waiting for her knight, so to speak, her rescuer, because I suspect that the core of who Susie is feels abandoned. And that won't just simply be by, present adult relationships. That would have gone back through her life and her lifetime. And that would mean that it's tough for a line of decent and honest communication to have formed over the years, hence the reason why a daughter's behaving in this particular way. But I would say, with this energy present, as far as the daughter is concerned, and that martyr, is that Susie mustn't is mistaken if she thinks her daughter doesn't love her. Because otherwise she wouldn't be coming back in. Their communication might be absolutely rubbish in how they talk to each other, but actually that Susie can know that actually her daughter does love her, even though it may not feel like that right now. Most likely that will become more apparent as time moves forward and moves on. So Susie would do well to let go of her resentment over feeling abandoned, because actually it's got nothing to do with the daughter, the abandonment energy. It's got everything to do with Susie's past, where she's felt abandoned somewhere along the road. Even though what she's saying here is that her the twins have become disruptive, smoking weed, and have some unsavoury friends. I think that's reflective of partly of a daughter's sense of self-esteem and feeling valued. And I think that will adjust as time moves forward. I suspect that will. Might put another one on here in a moment just to have a look and to see as far as that's concerned. So let's have a look as far as the sun is concerned, what's going on there. So I'm thinking of the sun. Let's see what we've got. We've got the student. Interesting. So he's, obviously in 17, he's that anyway, but it's symbolic of as in the student of life. He hasn't got a clue what's going on. What that means is that he's kind of new to stuff in his world. He's just kind of doing his thing, as I suppose 17-year-old teenager would do. New to things, quite sort of naive around different aspects of life. But actually, this real dynamic here is that yes, he's behaving like that, and it's quite irritating. But at the same time, the real issue is not between Susie and her son. The real issue is between Susie and her daughter. Okay, so let's have a look and see how, if Susie is able to let go of this, the abandonment stuff and all of that, and the looking for her rescuer, or so much as releasing it enough where she can then open her relationship once more with her daughter, where her daughter feels very, very responsible for her, even though she's not communicating it and her behaviour is not as such right now. But she sees her mother as this person who's done her best. I would say that she does feel that, she does know that, it's done her best, but at the same time she sees her mother as feeling lost. Okay, so let's have a look and see what Susie can utilise within herself to perhaps improve that dynamic between her and her daughter, so that she's not feeling her daughter's lack of self-worth, which is there, because that will be why she feels frustrated and resentful towards her. Okay, it will be that she's just feeling the undertones of what's going on as far as her own daughter is concerned. So let's have a little look. So what have we got? Guide. Okay, interesting. So there's no swift answer to this, so to speak. It's about Susie using her instincts and her own intuition in the moment. kind of thing. So it will be a moment by moment adjustment and a moment by moment interaction. So I suspect that the way that it will start to feel better for Susie is that over time, a daughter will mature. But if Susie is able to let go of this, waiting for a rescuer kind of thing and abandonment stuff, and use her deeper intuition, a deeper insight as far as that's concerned, she will start to see a better dynamic and interaction with her daughter that is around communication, because I suspect that true communication has been tough for Susie because of that abandonment kind of feel that will have followed her certainly for her adult life. But I do feel very strongly, as far as this situation is concerned, and these 3 life code 6s, is that her children may not show it right now, but they are deeply grateful for Susie's efforts and what she's done. But they also, certainly her daughter, recognises at a deeper level that her mother has felt like a bit of a lost soul in terms of that 6 energy, and has felt really quite alone in that process of bringing her children into their adult years. But I strongly suspect that later on, the daughter will lose that kind of selfishness and will start to develop and strengthen that relationship with her mother. Okay, so what can we learn from this kind of situation is that, sometimes when we're carrying our own wounds, we can't see what our own behaviour is in terms of its direct impact on other people. We can't necessarily see it because we're trying to protect our own wound, especially when it's a strong one as far as abandonment is concerned. And that if we can start to make little inroads as far as that's concerned, we feel safer in ourselves and safer, therefore, in being able to communicate with others in a kind way, which, as an intuitive sensitive you will do anyway. But rather than a needy way, that it comes from a kindness that is just naturally who you are. So that's the end of this episode of the Sensitive Mind Show. If you've enjoyed it and found it helpful, then do share it with your friends, and be sure to join me next week, where I look forward to giving you an alternative perspective on your relationship dilemmas. Bye for now, and let me leave you with this.